The man had just retired and returned to his hometown, only to discover that the once peaceful place had become a desolate wasteland. Every corner of the land carried the smell of death. Looking at the horrifying scene before him, Lotte immediately became worried about his family. He climbed onto his horse and stared toward the home he had dreamed of returning to for years. A terrible feeling spread through his body. When he finally arrived, he discovered that his house was ruined and had been taken over by his neighbor. Lotte confronted the neighbor and demanded to know what happened to his family. Terrified, the neighbor removed his hat and nervously explained that Lotte's mother had starved to death during the famine months earlier, while his brother had been executed after attacking the police. The words struck Lotte like a knife through the heart. Filled with grief, he stepped down from his horse and stared lifelessly at the pigs now living inside his former home. The neighbor quickly explained that he had only borrowed the house temporarily to raise animals, then revealed where Lotte's wife was staying. Without hesitation, Lotte rushed there, but when he arrived, he found several policemen surrounding the building. He demanded answers, but the officers ignored him and harshly ordered him away. Desperate, he shouted for his wife. The moment he heard her voice, he tried to force his way inside, only to be beaten down by the officers and pinned helplessly to the ground. His wife hurried out with their children while workers on the roof began tearing the house apart. Suddenly, his wife's brother burst from inside and attacked the man overseeing the demolition in an effort to protect the family home. Lotte could do nothing but watch as his brother-in-law was killed in front of him. Hearing his wife's screams drove him into complete despair, and moments later he was arrested for interfering with public affairs. At the station, the cruel police chief noticed the knife hanging from Lotte's horse and declared that he would be executed. According to the chief, any interference with police authority was an insult deserving death. Furious, Lotte fought back. Chaos erupted as officers rushed in with guns drawn. Despite being overwhelmed, Lotte used his military experience to fight his way free and escape the station. He immediately rode off in search of his wife and children. But when he reached their shelter, he found the roof destroyed. Looking inside, he discovered his wife and daughter frozen to death. The sight shattered him completely. He tried to cry out, but no sound came from his trembling mouth. The world around him seemed to lose all color as he wandered the streets in numb despair. Eventually, he returned to the neighbor who had taken over his house. Lotte sat silently at the table while the frightened man nervously promised to return the home. Trying to calm him, the neighbor poured him a drink. Lotte quietly drank the alcohol before slowly drawing the knife from his waist. Panicking, the neighbor insisted he had nothing to do with the deaths of Lotte's family. He claimed innocence and pretended to sympathize with Lotte's suffering. But Lotte refused to believe him. Even if the man had not killed his family personally, he was certain the neighbor knew the truth. Suddenly, the neighbor grabbed a hidden gun and pulled the trigger. But the damp weather had ruined the gunpowder and the weapon failed to fire. Seizing the opportunity, Lotte grabbed him and slowly drove the knife into his chest. Afterward, Lotte went directly to the town courthouse. Sitting quietly in the back, he watched the judge handle cases calmly and professionally. Before dying, the neighbor had revealed that this seemingly honorable judge was responsible for the destruction of his family. So once court ended, Lotte confronted the judge in his office. The judge coldly defended himself, claiming he had only enforced the law when sentencing Lotte's brother. According to him, he was merely an executor of justice. The judge attempted to dismiss him and open the door, but Lotte slammed it shut. He slowly approached, pinned the judge against the wall, and killed him. That night, Lotte fled the town forever. After attacking the police station, killing the neighbor, and hanging the judge, he became a wanted fugitive forced to survive on the run. While traveling through the cold wilderness, he came across a church filled with starving people waiting for porridge while listening to a priest preach. Lotte, who had lost all faith, ignored the sermon completely. He walked straight to the food, took a bowl, and sat down to eat. The furious priest demanded that everyone listen to God's word before receiving food, but Lotte refused to stop eating. Finally, the priest snatched away his spoon and declared that God's work came first. Enraged, Lotte grabbed the priest and shoved him outside. Then he announced to the hungry crowd that the food belonged to everyone. The starving people immediately stormed inside for porridge. The following morning, Lotte broke into a wealthy landowner's warehouse to steal food for the starving poor. When the owner confronted him, he lied and claimed to be only a worker who would die if the food disappeared. Lotte saw through the lie and knocked the man to the ground. But before he could continue, several policemen suddenly arrived at the farm. A violent gunfight broke out. The officers retreated in panic while the captain prepared for another attack. At the same time, another officer tried sneaking up on Lotte from the side. Because weapons of that era could only fire a single shot before reloading, every move became deadly. Lotte aimed directly at the approaching officer, who froze in fear. But instead of killing him, Lotte spared his life and rode away. That night, while the officer stood guard, he suddenly awoke to find Lotte sitting before him with a gun. It turned out the two men had once fought together as comrades in the army and had been close friends for years. Lotte begged his old friend to abandon the pursuit because he did not want to kill him. But the officer explained that arresting Lotte was his duty. Though neither wanted to fight, both understood they now stood on opposite sides of the law. Heartbroken, Lotte finally backed away into the darkness. Later, determined to take revenge against the corrupt landlords responsible for the suffering of the poor, Lotte crept into another wealthy home intending to assassinate its owner. But when he pulled back the blanket, he discovered not the landlord, but a disguised fugitive hunter waiting for him. In the shadows stood his former comrade, now fully part of the force hunting him down. The real landlord rushed into the room while the disguised hunter prepared to arrest Lotte. Just as escape seemed impossible, Lotte's old friend suddenly turned against the others long enough to help him flee. Lotte seized the opportunity, kidnapped the landlord, and escaped. But because his comrade had allowed him to flee, the authorities arrested the officer for treason. The police captain tortured him for information about Lotte's location, but the loyal officer refused to speak. Furious, the captain ordered his execution. As soldiers prepared the firing squad, Lotte appeared from afar and opened fire, creating chaos. He charged into the square on horseback while bullets flew everywhere. The captain believed he had shot Lotte dead, only to discover he had actually killed the kidnapped landlord. Meanwhile, Lotte slipped into the police station itself and launched another attack from inside. Refugees outside the station used the chaos to storm the building and steal food from the storage rooms while officers struggled to regain control. Soon, two policemen cornered Lotte on the second floor. During the brutal fight, all three crashed down into the stable below. Even after the fall, the battle continued until Lotte finally overpowered one of them and left him hanging lifeless against the iron bars. But before he could escape, two more armed officers stopped him. At the last possible moment, his rescued comrade arrived on horseback, allowing Lotte to leap aboard and escape once more. As they rode away, the captain fired another shot that struck the already wounded Lotte. Furious, the comrade turned and aimed his weapon at his own superior officer, but the gun clicked empty. The two men escaped, but Lotte soon collapsed from his injuries. With his final strength, he questioned why the people suffered in starvation while the rich lived in luxury. Why was food hoarded behind police walls while ordinary citizens froze and died outside? Consumed by anger and despair, Lotte finally breathed his last. His comrades stared at the lifeless body with overwhelming sadness. But in that cruel and unjust era, there were countless people like Lotte, broken by oppression, abandoned by society, and left with no choice except to die fighting against a world that had already forgotten them.